Do you remember Soma? Welcome to Undiluted Hocus Pocus, a podcast about the wonder of problems. I am your host, John Allure. Soma was a parlor game, mass-produced by Parker Brothers. The Parker Brothers, I think there were three Parker Brothers. Charles is the older. I'd have to look it up. And it came about in the late 60s. So seven pieces made up of these geometrically shaped unit cubes, and you could assemble them into like this one elegant palm-sized cube, giant cube. You could also make other things with Soma, geometric architectural buildings and something that looked like a giraffe or a dog or whatever. I never really found that much fun. But the Parker Brothers handbook claimed that there were over 1 million solutions for Soma. You could put these 7 pieces together 1 million different ways. And theoretically, that was true, but we live in reality. In reality, there were about 240 solutions. And in reality, I think I, over the years, only found 3. We got Soma, probably it came as a Christmas present around 1969. There was a wave of these things. Later in the 70s, we had the pet rock. Everyone remembers the pet rock. The novelty present seems to be a real hit around Christmas, things you put in your stocking, stuff like that. And there would be more beautifully, more elegantly designed Soma puzzles over the years, like beautifully wooden ones you could get and all of that. And businessmen would have this, on their, in their office, along with the, the 5 balls that tick-tocked back and forth, and feng shui, sand garden. There's all this kind of crap. Is that kind of thing that kind of captured the imaginations. I always liked that cheap plastic version. It had this tactile quality, those blocks, those hollow blocks. It was very kind of kitsch nostalgic. I believe ours was the plain ivory version, but it came in a bunch of primary colors. I remember red, blue. It was like a prime blue one. And recently I purchased a red Soma to fiddle around with over the holidays. Just as hundreds of families did over 50 years ago. You kind of spend all day in your pajamas, forging in the kitchen, listening to Burl Ives or whatever record you got that holiday for on Christmas on the stereo. And then, somebody would pull out Soma and you kind of ponder the possibilities, daydream through the holidays. And though the Parker Brothers claimed that Soma was a family game, Soma was like solitaire. It was a puzzle for one.
Introducing Soma, the cube puzzle game. One challenge is rebuilding the cube. It can be done in more than 1 million ways, right? For other challenges, take the booklet and with the same 7 pieces, solve the pyramid, the zigzag wall, or this, or this. With Soma, you solve lots of puzzles. It's another brain game from Parker Brothers. Now, didn't you?
As so often happens when I think of these things and run it by my daughters, they know this stuff already, so they had to enlighten me. And when I mentioned Soma, they were like, "Soma, the video game?" I said, "No, not the video game." But they knew it was a Greek word meaning body. They knew it was, I think, based on Sanskrit. And but what they don't know is in 1958, the American amateur mathematician Martin Gardner wrote about the Soma puzzle. He had a popular article, Mathematical Games in Scientific American, and you could write about this in two dimensions. You didn't really need the 3D model. So he was writing about 3D models in 2D. And a decade later, the Danish inventor and poet Piet Hein came up with a 3D version of Martin's article and called it Soma. And Piet Hein was, he's, as I say, a poet. He popularized these short poems, which were also kind of puzzles or riddles called Grooks, Danish Grooks. And he lived under the German occupation in Denmark. And he published his first Grook, and it went like this. This is called Consolidation Grook. Losing one glove is certainly painful, but nothing compared to the pain of losing one, throwing away the other, and finding the first one again. That's it. That's the Grook. And when people thought about it, they realized, and later Piet Hein expounded on this, that this was really a riddle about the resistance. And that first glove that you lose was the Danish people losing their freedom under the occupation. And the second glove was the greater loss, losing one's patriotism by cooperating with the Nazis. So the point of the Grook, the poem, was to not give up in the face of this tremendous adversity. The Germans didn't get it, but the Danish people did, and the Consolidation Grook started appearing on building graffiti all across Denmark. And Piet Hein said he came up with this idea for Soma during a quantum mechanics lecture by the German theoretical physicist Werner Heisenberg. The 3x3x3 cube design was based on Heisenberg's matrix formulation of quantum physics theory. And Hein was known as this brilliant polymath and he would play these games. He said he'd play mental ping pong with physics superstars like Niels Bohr, and so he came up with this his brilliant mind, this novelty puzzle. There's if you feel the word Soma, if it's familiar to you, Soma is like this mind altering. It's like the ultimate dystopian party drug in Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, his sci-fi book. So that's kind of where that comes from. There is other puzzles of this nature. Pentamino is a puzzle. It's larger in design. And it first appeared in Henry Dudley's The Canterbury Puzzles in 1907. A lot of puzzle activity at the turn of the century. I'm sure it dates before that, but because of the dawn of the newspaper industry and things like that, commercialization of the newspaper industry, puzzles began to be promoted, particularly in the late 1870s, 1880s, and into the turn of the century. So there's a lot of discussion about puzzle masters and people playing these games in newspapers and talking about them. And Pentamino was no exception, was one of those. There's the Bedlam cube. Soma is 3x3x3. The Bedlam cube is 4x4x4. It's a more complex version of Soma. It's 13 pieces in this case, so it's more. So it takes more time to solve because it's more. And then we go into video games, right? The Tetris is a two-dimensional vertical variation, really, of Soma, of fitting these blocks as they cascade down on you. And then the game my kids were familiar with, Soma, is a psychological horror, point of view game, inspired by the works of Philip K. Dick. I've spent this holiday trying to carve out some space for reflection. And I guess some people call this mindfulness. I don't. I rather have a distaste for the fads. But yeah, I think a lot of people are pondering this. I'm sure you are too. That we spend so much time cramming every minute of the day with busy work, chores and errands and lists. And of course, doom scrolling, a modern version. I think this is a matter of not wanting to reflect because we're scared of what we might find there when we're alone in our thoughts, alone with those thoughts, with no puzzles to ponder life and things. We may discover just how insignificant we are. No one's wanting your next tweet. There's no desire for this. There's no need to go shopping again. The refrigerator's full. Will we run out of gas? Maybe. I guess I was doom scrolling. Somebody posted online this, I don't know if, they post these things and make themselves feel better. This is something by somebody named Tutu Mora. I don't know who that is feeling the need to be busy all the time is a trauma response and fear-based distraction from what you'd be forced to acknowledge and feel if you slowed down. That's a version of what I'm expressing, what I was thinking, certainly. And it's a paradox. It's a parlor game that we play with ourselves. I think I think at its heart, we yearn, long, deeply to be reflected upon, to matter, to be remembered. And the things we choose to occupy our time they're just puzzles, creating busy work. It's better than just waiting. You could sit there and contemplate a dripping faucet, but that's not much fun. So we play these games, but never lose sight of the fact that we're really just counting out time. And speaking of games and passing the time, I did finish the draft of the manuscript I'm working on. That case is not here. It's just short of 100,000 words. I left a little space for some things I'm already thinking of adding. Editing was really a process of taking away crap, and consolidating and being more efficient. That took a solid month of work. Now it needs to kind of marinate for a while and go away in a drawer, well, and not think about it. Because, for 5 months, it's the most important thing. It's the only thing you're thinking about. And you've become very, very obsessive about it. And it's like your child, and you think it's filled with ideas that are going to shock the world, and everybody's going to go, well, this is necessary, and this is new, and I want to talk about this. And of course, that might not happen. It's a busy world, busy minds, and people may not take to it. There's no guarantee. So I need a little creative distance from it and a little perspective before to keep you informed with that. What happens next? I think I said before to you, my publishing deadline is September 2023. So I got 9 months really. And where I work, it's busy season right now, so I don't have the time, the mental time really to dedicate it. It needs to go away because I have other things to do. There's some follow up I need to do. I need to maybe add some things, possibly that will take a little more research, although I don't want that to go on forever. The other thing that is a possibility is to submit it early and see if it can be published any earlier. There's a danger there. I'd like to do it earlier because what I want to avoid is a publishing date around the 2024 U.S. election. That's the last thing I want to do. I think I'd like to go for an early year winter release this time. There just seems to be too much going on in any fall. The great gambit the publishing industry does with that is we'll release it in September and it'll get in the queue for all the Christmas shopping. I just don't think that's a reality anymore at all. People's shopping trends are so capricious that there's no guarantee that it's going to end up in somebody's Amazon wish list shopping cart based on your plan or your scheme to get it out there in a process fashion. So I don't truck with that business at all. Just think about the writing process. I'd read recently the Michael Chabon, the writer, Mysteries of Pittsburgh is his first novel. The more famous one is escaping me. Cavalier Clay. He writes the Star Trek stuff, the reboot of Star Trek, which is interesting. He's a brilliant novelist. And he's talking about the writing process and how that he doesn't, he doesn't subscribe to this kind of boozy late night scribbling. He says there's too many self-destructive writers. He calls them rebel angel novelists. I don't know if that's a Robertson Davies reference, but I like it. And I think I share with him that I really thrive on boring consistency. There's something to be said to have the discipline to get up every morning at 5 a.m. and write for 3 hours every damn day for 5 months. My daughter was asking me about that. My daughter wants to be a writer. One of my daughters. I won't tell you which one. I will find you. I just watched Taken. Liam Neeson, Taken. I'd never seen it. Come on. It's a great revenge action movie. Why was I avoiding it for so long? What's not to like about Liam Neeson in anything? Liam Neeson brushing his teeth. Good God. Anyway, my daughter, she was like, do you write every day? And I do. And she said, I need to get back to that. She journals. Well, I'm her father. I'm going to say this, but she's more talented than me. Yeah. I write every day. I think that's a muscle you have to work that way. And you shouldn't overwrite. Jack Todd, sports writer for the Gazette, was talking about the young people who kind of gas on Twitter about their writing abilities. I just finished the greatest 5,000 words. No, you didn't. You didn't. Trust me, because you wrote 4,000 too many. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't push it. Stop. Quit while you're ahead, I say, and then start again the next day. Anyways, that's my shtick. I'm sticking to it. But speaking of boring consistency, if you follow me on Twitter, and I'm at Justice Guy, JUSTUSGUI on Twitter. I'm also now on Mastodon. I'm also now on Post Media. Are we gonna have this discussion now? I don't know what my handles are. They're well. I can. I'm just like at John Allure on Post, and I am on Mastodon. I'm on some weird thing. I'm also at John Allure on Mastodon. These are puzzles that I can't friggin' figure out. Post seems awfully capricious and temperamental. And the great problem with both of them is no one can find anyone. People can't find each other. I can't find people that I know. I suppose they sort of say they're sort of a kinder, gentler Twitter. I don't know that I really agree with that. Post seems awfully wonky to me. I mean, for something that says it, it wants to avoid the acrimony of Twitter. It seems, I'm sorry to say this, but it seems to be not far left, but left of center version of everything. There's an awful lot about George Soros, and there's an awful lot about Biden. And I say it again, I'm not political. I don't want either side. I don't give a rat's ass about it. So for something that's trying to put itself as fair and balanced, I don't see it. Anyway, I'm there. I'm on Justice Guy. We just did a full 360 for me to say, speaking of boring consistency, because I post cycling photos all the time, I finished my cycling goal for 2022. I set a mark in my head of 12,451 miles, which is halfway around the world. And it wasn't planned this way, but both the writing and cycling achievements happened almost simultaneously. It was like synchronicity. I finished my ride on Christmas Eve, and the final edit I made on That Case Is Not Here was Christmas morning. Or let's say a symmetry that wasn't planned. It just worked out that way. My final ride was miserable. I knew the weather was going to be bad that way. Symbolically, I try to avoid at all costs riding indoors because I don't think it's very good for the soul. You should do a shorter ride outdoors, given the choice between the two, rather than, twice the mileage on Peloton and whatever. Because what are you going to miss? You're going to miss a cow. You're going to miss a goat. Yesterday I saw some really great goats. You're going to miss the good stuff. That's why. But, that morning, so symbolically, Christmas Eve, I'm like, yeah, I got to push. I got to do this. And I go out and it's cold and I know it's going to be windy. But I'm riding, I'm like, this is not too bad. I'm 10 miles out. The temperature drops from 40 to 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So I don't know, like, what is that? From 50 to 40, something like that. I no longer know. Probably going in the wrong direction. And then the wind picks up. There are gusts of between 30 and 40 miles an hour. And I'm like, shit, how could this possibly get worse? And it begins freezing rain, like hail, massive pellets, right? I'm turning my face to the side and trying to look out of one eye like a horse or a cow, because it's pelting my face and it really stings. So I'm like, I got to get out of this. So I cut the ride short and kind of duck back home, but I did it. I did it. The monotony of getting up and riding even when you don't want to, it's almost surpassed by the tedium of going out and riding 35 miles every day. Even when, you've reached the limits of your tolerance for things like cows and cars and angry motorists. God knows there's a lot of those. There's a lot of people who just feel the need to honk at you and 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 express their frustration. A new trend is people who ride by you and honk and then give you the finger. I don't quite understand the will and the drive to give you the finger over the dashboard. I just don't get it. But anyway, the commitment, the fidelity of all that kind of stuff is admirable. To the writing, but it's left me little time and space to indulge the rich anarchy of a wandering mind. And I got a great wandering mind. We all do. But I've kind of disciplined it to keep it busy, right? Because over the years, job, work, children, you don't want to go too far astray, but you need to go astray. So that I've really tried to do less than nothing this holiday. And for the record, that 12,451 miles, that was never an appointment I intended to keep. I thought there'd be mishaps along the way, like a broken bone or a bike would need repairs, illness, unplanned travel, stuff like that. It never happened. So I was forced to live up to this commitment, which is, in some ways exhilarating, but also kind of a drag. I think it was in September in the fall that I realized, oh shit, I can really pull this off, ride halfway around the world. And now I have to do it because I said so. No one's telling me I had to do it, but I felt like I had to do it. So that's the way that is. Over time, the mental effort began to outweigh the physical. And some of my best ideas come when I'm writing. Also, some of my worst ideas come when I'm writing. And I keep like a little digital notepad open on my iPhone. It's between my handlebars to kind of capture observations and things like this. I know it's a hazard, but I try to practice safe texting and writing. This is no way to write the great American novel or anything, but it saved me, from a lot of truly idiotic ideas. Something that I think is inspirational. After out on a ride, I realize that it's crap. And as my daughter says, now that I've gone halfway around the world, I'm stuck. There's nothing to do in 2023 but commit to writing the other half, which I've begun. New Year's Day, I got my 30 miles in, so that'll be quite an achievement for me. Quite frankly, I was wondering whether I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do this. So I talked about like your bike breaking down along the way, and that didn't happen. But certainly, I think in May I took it in for a tune-up I have a Trek bike, and Chapel Hill has a Trek boat. Chapel Hill has a Trek store. We're religiously devoted to our bike shops. I'm no exception. And the guys at Trek Bikes in Chapel Hill are fantastic. And they fixed the bike up so well that I was able to ride from May until December 31st. My gears just gave way on December 31st, where I need to bring it in again. But I did, in November, bring it in I had a flat, and I could have changed it on my own, but I wanted it done right. And I needed to be on the road immediately. And so I went into Trek and I expressed this to them, and they said, why the sense of urgency? And so I explained to them that I was trying to ride halfway around the world. And they were like, you're friggin' kidding me, right? And I said, no. So they were so impressed by this that somehow they shared it with other Trek franchises, apparently around the world, because the folks in Perth, Australia caught wind of it. If you know where Perth is, when you say it's Western Australia, it's Western Australia. Mate, I knew this, but I forgot this. I knew this from like grade 7 geography, which was one of the only classes that stuck with me for some reason. So I knew Perth was in the outback. It's a large urban center, but in my mind, there's nothing but desert between that and Melbourne. The folks at Perth, Australia Trek Bikes caught wind of this, and they sent me a message, and I'm going to try and play it now here.
Hey John, it's Steph, Tony and Xander here from the Trek store in Perth, Western Australia.
Brian from your local Trek store in Chapel Hill reached out to us and told us about the amazing achievement you've made cycling halfway around the world this year. That's a fair old effort, mate. Congratulations.
It's a beautiful summer's day here in Perth. The temperature is 30 degrees Celsius, which is about 85 in your terms.
We hope it's not too cold in North Carolina and you are able to complete the fun 250 miles to cap off the year.
Great festive season, all of us. Have the best in Perth.
Bye.
That's the folks at Trek Bikes in Perth, Australia. And of course, the best thing about that is in the background, they're listening to Seals and Crofts' Summer Breeze, which I just love. All right, enough gassing on about biking. This is not a podcast about biking. This is Undiluted Hocus Pocus, the wonder of problems. Welcome back. And if you've noticed, so this is really a podcast companion to the Substack site where I write. And I've changed the name from That Case Is Not Here to Undiluted Hocus Pocus. That Case Is Not Here was only supposed to be a working title for the book I'm writing, but it looks like it's going to stick, that's actually going to be the title. And I don't want to be too confusing with things. So I thought of Undiluted Hocus Pocus. This is a nod to Piet Hein, and you can look that up. If you go to, I'm not going to be writing on the Teresa Allure site, but if you go to my Substack, which is just John Allure, JohnAllure.substack.com, there are links in today's episode to things like who's this Michael Chabon, and who's this Piet Hein, and what's a Grook? Grook sounds like a Klingon. There are links to all of that, and you can follow me on Substack. It's free for now. I don't know if and when I'll put up a paywall, but for now it's completely free. Undiluted Hocus Pocus. If you find that particular Grook, I think you'll understand why I want to do this. I want to write about other things. I want to talk about other things that are not, in the little box, the little cube of unsolved murder. Sometimes I want to write about unsolved murder. But I've always been fascinated by puzzles and games and riddles. I'm not particularly good at any of those things, but they interest me. I'm more of a chronicler of, I'm kind of fascinated with the history of puzzles and games more than anything. So I can really be a fly on the wall third person about them, but I'm not king of the Will Shortz crossword puzzle page. I don't have the patience for brain teasers, but magic is different. I was like as a kid, I was one of those nerdy magic enthusiasts, sleight of hand and things like that. But even that, I know the tricks, but I'm not very good at them. I'm not a good palmist. I'm not good with cards or ropes or things like that. But I do know the landscape. So that's really it. And sometimes I will write, about murder. For instance, I know the trajectory of this for the next little while, and there is a case that will be brought up here that is going to take you right, but you're going to feel like, well, this is Who Killed Teresa again, and it is, it's like kind of a foundational, like primo type of case. It's that kind of case, but I want to frame it differently. That's all. And, so I want to give this a shot for a good 6 months, and who knows, maybe, after that, we'll come around to going back to the original. But for now, it's Undiluted Hocus Pocus. Hocus Pocus. Abracadabra. I have nothing to recommend this month. There's nothing I've really read that's worth passing on to you. There's no end of year list worth a second mention for me. That's kind of the point. I haven't spent my idle vacation time filling up with crap that somebody else says is essential or breaking. No one said anything clever. There wasn't, in my opinion, any must-see event. There never is, in my opinion. As they do, some famous people died around the holiday, and the world held its breath for fear that this might be catching. But there's really no need for a public awakening and eulogy. It will happen again. I assure you, people die. So I'm just, as I said, taking some time to let my thoughts meander. This is what Einstein would do when he announced, "Now I will a little think," whenever he kind of reached like a mental roadblock. To ruminate on things, hoping to catch time's bend. If you like the podcast, you can follow us on the Substack, johnallure.substack.com. Undiluted Hocus Pocus is the name of that Substack. And now I will probably eventually set up a Facebook page. If you're listening to the podcast, it's on Spreaker. I will eventually here set up the links to its where the big ones, iTunes and that. But it's just, Spreaker.com/show/undiluted Hocus Pocus. Please share. I would really, it needs time for it to grow. I am not particularly optimistic it's going to be anywhere near as popular as Who Killed Teresa. Them's the breaks, but I'm willing to give it a shot because I really want to break out of the mold. And whatever else is needed on social media in order to do the customary promotions and things like that. Thanks for listening to this first episode. This is Undiluted Hocus Pocus. I'm your host, John Allure. The wonder of puzzles and problems.